Right, welcome everybody. I seem to have made a mistake on the recording, so I am re-recording the video did not upload. Alright, so today we'll be looking at logical and comparison operators. First off, we will take a look at the homework solution. So the first one, the change calculator. We start, for my solution, I start by giving the user two inputs that he has to supply. So first off, he says the user types in the item price, and next the amount paid. So then I take the amount paid and I subtract the price of the item from that to get the amount of change that needs to be returned to the customer. So in the problem, I said we can only use 5 rands, 2 rands, and 1 rands. So first off, we start by taking the 5 rands. So I take the money that the money paid. So the money paid now at this time will be only the change that needs to be given. So you take the change and you use your integer division or your floor division by 5. So our largest amount. So the largest amount will be the 5s. So I first off look how many 5 rands I can return. So next what I do is I take the money paid amount, which is now the change amount, and I use the modulus. So the remainder after all the 5s have been after all the 5 rands have been given, then I see what amount remains. So now I want to see how many 2 rands to return. So I take the 2s, so which will be the 2 rand coins, and I take the change amount using floor division by 2. So this will tell us how many full 2s can go into the change. So this will now store the value of 2 rands that can be returned. And finally, the money paid. So this is the change that's left. So we will take the remainder. So everything after the 2s, everything that remains will be the 1 rand coins that remain. So let's take, for example, the product cost us 38 rand. We paid with a 50 rand. So the change returned will be 2 5 rands and 1 2 rand. So we will get the amount of 12 rand as change. So it gives us the most efficient solution to returning change. So 2 5 rands will be 10 rand, and that 1 2 rand will add up to 12 rand. Right, with no 1 rands for this specific example. Okay. So next up was the trapezoid, the area of the trapezoid, calculating that. So I ask you to store to give the user a chance to input all 3 values. So you take the first line of code should be very easy, the first 3 lines. We've already done that in the past. So where you take the height, you cast it to an integer and get the user's input. You cast the user's input to an integer. Same with the long side and the short side. So I gave you the hint of the formula of how to calculate a trapezoid. So I just wanted you to convert the formula to programming. So first off, we start with the long side and the short side by adding them together. Then we divide that by 2 in the brackets, and you times that with the height. So this works the same as in math, the order of the operations, as the math you do in school. So first it will calculate the brackets, the long side and the short side. Then it will calculate the second pair of brackets with the division, and then finally it will do everything outside of the brackets. So in this case we only have a multiplication, and then we just display the area. Okay, so as I did in the class just now, I did ask the students why you thought this was a decimal and not just an integer, and the answers were correct. It will return a float. So the value we store in area, the area variable, will be a float. A float being any number with a decimal. An integer does not have a decimal. So as you can see with the first 3 numbers, we enter integers, but the program will return us a float. Alright, so we start now with the comparison operators. So a comparison operator, it takes two values and it outputs either a true or a false. Okay, so a true or a false is a bool value, which I will get to now. So the comparison operators are fairly straightforward, except the first two. The first two you will most likely not have seen if you have not programmed before. Okay, so as I explained in one of the previous lessons, where the equal symbol in programming does not mean the same as in math. In programming, the equal symbol means the assignment operator. So if you say A and then the symbol and 5, then it means A is assigned the value of 5. If we want to test if two values are equal, then we use the double equal sign, as we see here. So this will return us a true or a false if we will do a few examples in a bit, but this will test the value of two variables and return if they are equal in value. Okay, and the opposite, the not equal, using the exclamation mark together with the equal symbol, will test if those two values are not equal and return us a true if the values are not equal. Greater than, less than, fairly straightforward. Greater than or equal to will return us, will test if all the values up and to including that value, and less than or equal to will also test all the values up and to including that value, where greater than or less than will only test up to that value and not include the value. So let's see what does that mean. So first off, we start by creating two variables called x and y. We can assign them any values. For the sake of my example, we'll be assigning okay, here I see I made a mistake. I called it x and y, and in my program a and b. Same thing, it does not matter in the end. So you'll take the values a, that is, so we will give the values a, the variable a the value of 5, and b the value of 10. So first we start by testing if a is less than b. So for our example, a being 5, b being 10. Alright, so what would you think the result would be? What do you expect the result to be? Okay, so a being 5, b being 10. So our output will return true. Okay, so the value can either be true or false. So the output of our comparison operator will be a bool. Okay, so a bool is a data type, like a string or an int or a float. So what we've done before, a string being text, int being integer, float being a number with a decimal, integer being a whole number that does not have a decimal. Okay, so a bool can store a value of either true or false, only one of those two. So in our example, 5 being smaller than less than 10 is true, so thus the output of our program will be true. Okay, so let's change the code now. Now we can take, let's make a 5 be 10, and now we test if they are equal to each other. Alright, so if a is 5 and 10 is b is 10, then our output will thus be false, because 5 is not equal to 10. But on the other hand, if we have the same value, so let's say a is 10 and b is also 10, now we test if a is equal to b, then we get the output of true, because a and b both have the same values. Alright, so you can test this not just with numbers, but you can also test this with strings. You can test if two strings are the same. Alright, and we can also print the result of our comparison directly. So Python does allow us to directly display what the bool value is of our comparison. So that's why we can put the comparison directly into a print function. Okay, so now let's test the not equal to operator. So if a is not equal to b, so let's assign two values again. So we make a 5 and b 10. And I want you to do this with me. You can pause the video at any time and test it on your own and unpause. If you do have any questions, please ask me or Mr. Vium on Wednesday, or me next time in the class you see me. Alright, so let's now test if A is not equal to B. So first we take the value of 5 for A and the value of 10 for variable B, and we compare them in the print function. So we now test if A does not equal to B. So 5 not being equal to 10 will give us the result of true, seeing as this comparison operator will return us a true if these two values are not equal. On the other hand, if we take, let's say, A being 10 and B being 10, both values have this, both variables have the same value, and we print A does not equal B, then we get the result of false because these two values are equal to each other. Right. A bit more about bools. We can now even go a step further. We can store the output of the comparison in a variable of type bool. So first off, we create a variable that is, we can call that variable is equal. So I will be creating this one with you. So let's create a variable and we call this, I'm going to get rid of this. Let's call it is equal. Now we can assign is equal a value. Okay, so for this bool variable, we can store either true or false. So now we can do a comparison. So let's see what I did in my example. Okay, so 5, so A is 5. Oh, I'm sorry, I have so many files open. Okay, here's our comparison. So A being 5 and B being 10. So let us go ahead and store the value of, let's start by making it easy and saying test if A is equal to B, and then we can print the value of is equal. So if we run this, what do you expect to happen? Okay, so we get a false, and why would that be? So if you take the value A being 5 and the value B being 10, so is 5 equal to 10? So the answer to that would be no, those are two different values. Right. Now we can compare if A does not equal 10. So let's run this one. Now we get the output of true, because 5 does not equal 10. Right. So we can store the comparison, the result of this comparison in the bool variable. So in this variable of is equal. And then we can print that result, or we can save that result and use it later. So this result is already stored. It is stored now, and then we can use it later in our program. Alright. So as I said here, we create a variable that is called is equal, and we can test any value, and we can store the output of our test in the is equal variable. Okay, so our output should now display false as A is not equal to B. Right. So let's go a step further. Let's make it a bit more complex. Let us look at logical operators to add even more comparisons into the mix. So logical operators combine our conditional statement. So a conditional statement, it gives us a true or a false. It gives a bool result. So the logical operators, as the name suggests, and or not. So looking at the AND logical operator, an AND will return true if both our conditional statements are true. So a conditional statement, in this case, would be our comparison. So if this comparison is true and this comparison is true, then this whole bracket will return us a true. If only one of them are true, then the entire bracket will return a false. So let's take a look. So 5 greater than 1, that is true. 10 greater than 5, that is also true. So both this comparison and that comparison, both of them are true, and thus our result will be true. On the other hand, if we change the comparison, if we look at 5 being less than 1, this is not true. 5 being greater than 2, that is true. So this first comparison will return a false, but the second comparison will return a true. Thus, our entire bracket using the AND operator will return us a false. Next up, the OR logical operator. So the OR logical operator will return true if at least one of the conditional statements is true. So by looking at the same example we just used, so if 5 is less than 1 or 5 is greater than 2. So for the second part, for 5 is greater than 2, that is true. 5 being less than 1 is not true. However, one of these return true, so our entire bracket will return true. The only way to get an OR to return false is if both the conditional statements are false. So is 5 less than 1? No, it is not. Is 5 less than 2? No, it is not. So thus our output will be false. Now let's use that in our code. So now we test if A does not equal B. So this will be true because 5 does not equal 10. But now let's use AND. Let's add a third variable. Let's say C is 8. So let's say is C greater than A? So is 8 greater than 5? So this will return true. And A does not equal B will return true. So if both these statements return true, then our entire output will be true. We can even go a step further. Let's make it more complex, just for fun. So let's make is true. Let's add another variable, another bool variable called is true. And now we take the value of is equal. So first we assign is equal a true or false value. Now we can use that in we can use that value and even test our result against something else. So let us test OR. Let us test if B is greater than C. Okay, so is 10 greater than 8? So let's see what happens when we run our program now. So okay, we get a true. So what happens is first we test these two comparisons. So A does not equal B, so 5 does not equal 10, that is true. And 8 is greater than 10, that is also true. So both these statements are true, thus we get a true. So is equal is true. Now we test is equal true, or is B greater than C? So is 10 greater than 8? Yes, so both these statements are true. So let's now change it up and say B is less than C, and we still get it true. And why would that be? Because is equal is true, B being smaller than C, so this will return as a false, but by using the OR keyword. So if either one of these two returns a true, then this whole bracket will return true. So when we change this now to AND, you still get a true because is I am printing the wrong value. I am sorry. So let's see the previous one. Is that still correct? That is true. Yes, as we said. Okay, so I was printing is equal instead of is true. Okay, so now if we print is true and we run this, then we get the value of false. So why would that be? So running through this entire comparison we just did, 5 does not equal 10, and 8 is greater than 5, so both of them are true, so this whole bracket returns true. And in this one, is equal is now assigned the value of true, and B being less than C, so this is not true because 10 is not less than 8. Thus, this bracket with the AND keyword will return us a false. So is true is now assigned the value of false. And thus when we run our program, our value is false. So if we change this back to OR, then we get a true. Right. So the other logical operator we'll be looking at will be the NOT. So the NOT logical operator. So the not does not compare values like the and or the or keyword. The not logical operator will return the opposite of the operand's result. Okay, so what does that mean? So these are the operands, the 5 and the 1. So the operator is the less than. So we check, is 5 less than 1? So this will give us a false output because 5 is not less than 1. But now we add not. Okay, so note here. Not will give us an inverse. So let's now assign is true a new value. So let's say is true is now assign the value of not is true. So what happens now is we take the value. So at the moment is true will be true as we just saw. So now we assign it a new value that uses the not keyword. So this will invert. It gives us the opposite result of what is inside the brackets. So if we run this, we will get a false. So as we saw, a is not, so 5 is not equal to 10. 10 is greater, 8 is greater than 5, so that's true. Is equal is true, and b being less than c, so 10 is not less than 8, but we look for the or keyword, so one of these are true. So this will return true. So is true until we do the not keyword. So the not will give us the inverse result. Alright, easy enough, I hope. However, practice does make perfect. So we come to the homework next. Okay, so as I explained in the class, for each of the following nonsense programs. So a nonsense program means this program does not really have a result. I just want you to test if you understand the not and or keywords. Okay, so what I want you to do is to write the results down what you expect it to be. So take a pen and a piece of paper and write down what you think the program will output in the console. So this being the console, what do you think will display here? Will it be false or will it be true? Or will it be a number? Will it be a string? What do you think will be the output? So first off, start by just doing these two comparisons or using these two logical operators. Then run the program after you have written down what you think the results will be and test if you were correct. Next up it gets a bit more complex, and the last one a bit more complex. A bit more. Alright. So I want you to test them by write them and then test them after you've written them. And if you were wrong on the piece of paper, then try and go through the program step by step to understand why you were wrong. Okay, for number 2, this is a bit of a more fun one. I want you to write a program that takes the input from 2 players. So you can play this game with your dad, your mom, sister, brother, anyone, your friend. So player 1 must enter a word, and then player 2 has to guess that word. Okay, so the program must display true if the word is guessed correctly, or false if the guess is wrong. Okay, so how you do that is, here's my little example. So player 1 will enter the word banana. Player 2 now has to guess that word. So player 2 guesses apple. And then the program will say false because player 2 did not guess correctly. So on the opposite, if both player 1 and player 2 can guess the word correctly, if player 2 can guess player 1's word correctly, it should show true. Okay, ensure both player 1 and player 2 use only lowercase letters. If there's a uppercase letter, then if, for example, you type the word computer as player 1 and player 2 guess also the word computer, but he types it with a capital letter C, and player 1 did it with a lowercase letter c, then the output will be false because they will not be exactly the same. Okay, so here's a hint. You can hide player 1's word by using this line of code here, the print with the new line multiplied by 80. So what this does is it prints 80 new lines. You can use a creative or clever way to hide the words any way you want. I'm just giving a hint, a very simplified way of hiding the word. But if you can find a more creative way, then please do use it. Right, so I'm excited to see how your program runs. I was able to do mine in about 3 lines of code. Let's see if you can do the same. Alright, so that's it for my lesson. I'm sorry about the recording not being the live class, but only being recorded afterwards. If you have any questions, please do feel free to ask and email or ask in the next class. Alright.